Hey gang, welcome back to another video here at Joe Daddy's Garage. This video is Brooklyn Pony Part 39. That means there's at least 38 other videos in this series. So if you're just coming to the channel and just starting to look at these videos, I suggest you go back and look at the playlist for the 66 Mustang convertible known as a Brooklyn Pony. When that car arrived, it was basically falling apart and I salvaged what I could from the car, but most of the car, as you see on the rack up here, is built from Dynacorn parts. Now I've also installed TCI suspension front and rear, and I've also been test fitting and mocking in other pieces along the way. So there's a bunch of videos on this channel about that particular car, and also if you're interested, there are videos on the 68 Mustang known as Jade, and then there's 2 or 3 other playlists that deal with Mustangs. So you can check those out as well. Today's video, I'm going to mock up or test fit this Ididit steering column. Now, I was supplied with this column by the owner, which is great, and it comes as a kit. Now, this was part of the package kit. I assume it was part of the package kit from TCI. So I'm hoping that everything is compatible. Along with the test fitting of this, there are some other pieces that are with the kit. Now, this is, again, TCI suspension, so it has rack and pinion steering on it, like the Mustang 2 type of steering system. So there are other pieces that came with the kit. There's a extension rod that connects the steering column to the mount point or to the post on the rack and pinion setup. There are also 2 U-joints. One goes to the rack and pinion post, and the other one, still in the package, goes to the bottom of the Ididit steering column. And one more thing that I'm going to use, and this may change, I'm not sure I want to keep using this piece or not. This is the original bracket that supported the factory steering column, and it's okay. I mean, it's just a steel, horseshoe looking thing. There's a rubber gasket in there, but it also has a tang on it, like a little post here in the center that would align into the original steering column. I know they make other ones I've seen on other channels. There's a channel called Call of George. He's got he's building a similar project, and I know that he installed or used a support bracket. I believe it was from Mustangs to Fear, and I think it's a billet piece. So we may look at doing that later, but for now I'm just going to work with what I have, and that is this factory bracket. Now I'm going to open up the box and show you what you get inside an Ididit package. Alright, let's see what's in the box. Pretty well packaged. Nice little foam blocks. Very nice. Of course, it's got the hole for the turn signal and for the tilt function. So that's obviously the left side, splined end, and some wiring. So let me get the other parts out. I know there's more to this. Alright, so it has another foam piece that the end sits in, and that's it. Alright, so I've got a little flyer here from talks about what if you want to add like a keyless ignition system, can upgrade it. So that's interesting. Set that aside. It's got the arms or the rods and caps you would have for your turn signal and your tilt function. Has a collar that supports it going in or through the firewall. And looks like that bag's open on the other end. Comes with a sticker, some grease for assembly, and it also has this connector. Now this connector is, from what I've looked at in the instructions, this is a male and female end so that you can connect one end to your steering column and the other end into your factory harness, or if you're going to add a painless or what's the other one, American Auto Wire, one of those different brands. So anyway, here's the instruction sheet picture with all the components you get in the package. Goes through the process of removing your steering column. Now if you know or don't know, the 65 and 66, the steering column is rigid. In other words, it doesn't collapse, and it's directly coming out of the steering box. So just know that going forward. This doesn't show you any detail about removing that steering box, but it's only talking about the column, so just keep that in mind. And then it talks about the shaft. The original shaft is round, and here the new, they call it the DD shaft, has two flat sides on it. And that is what I showed earlier. I'll grab that in a second. And of course, just showing you how to do this much of it, but it doesn't show you any actual installation. It's up to you to get it in place. So I'll go over more details as I go along, but at least you know now what's in the box. Now, before I get too involved with this, I want to show you some more details. I looked over the instructions a little bit harder, and this instruction set is, for replacing an original steering column and keeping the box. And in that process, it talks about how you need to cut off the original shaft 4 inches from the face of the nut, as they call it here. And you'd have to cut off that shaft, and then you have to reshape it to make it look like the DD shaft. Now, that's fine, I guess, but it makes it kind of tricky in that it tells you this is a round shaft, flat centered. Let's see, an easy way to do this is to make a paper template. Create your own template by using the measurements from the diagram below. Okay, that sounds great. Well, it gives you these measurements, and then it says diagram not to scale. Here's a thought. Why not make an actual template that you could cut out or have an insert that you could just wrap around it and do what you need to do instead of having to scale up your own? Because according to this, the dimensions are already predetermined. There's nothing you're going to change. So I think it would be beneficial if there was some sort of an insert, just a piece of paper with a template that you could use to modify the shaft on your steering box. This is just an observation. Now, I'm not going to be doing that because we're using, like I said, the rack and pinion system, and I believe I think it's made by Borgeson, if I remember correctly. It has it on a piece of paper. But, if you had to do this reshaping of the shaft, you'd have to either do it by hand, or it suggests taking it to a machine shop. Remove the gearbox and take it to your local machine shop to be modified. So just know that as you go forward that you're going to have to deal with some things if you're trying to do this to a stock style gearbox. Another thing I want to point out, this package comes with 2 U-joints. These are identical. They each have the DD flat shape, as they call it, and then the spline shaft. Now, what you'll need to do as you're going through this process, you'll need a 1/2 inch wrench to break loose the lock nut that's on the threaded piece that's going to lock it into your steering column or the steering box. So you loosen that up with a 1/2 inch, and then you need a 5/32 Allen wrench to turn that. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at parts and pieces you're going to need. So that's going to lock that in to the end of the column. So if I show you that, the column has splined end and it has a groove cut in it, and that's where that shaft locks into, that threaded shaft. Now I want to make another point. You know, this thing is designed to put in at whatever length you want it to be. And I say that for various reasons. One, they give you this really long shaft. I'm thinking it's probably about 18 inches, you know, material here. So it's up to you to cut this at whatever length you want it to be. With that in mind, know that there's also a slot cut in the bottom of the main tube. The reason for that slot is if you're using your factory bracket, which has that little tang on it like I mentioned, the tang is designed to go in there. So what that'll do is it gives you the option to move this back and forth, you know, change the length prior to making this the length that you want. So just keep that in mind. If you're wanting to have it a little bit closer, obviously you want the column a little bit higher, you want it further away, a little bit lower, and then that's where this comes into play with the slot. That's also going to help with the index. And what I mean by that, that slot is going to keep the column from rotating, and your posts that come out for your tilt and your turn signal function will be in the right place. Just know that. That's about it as far as, you know, kind of overview information that I want to share. You know, I think I might clean, you know, blast this and clean it up. I don't know yet, but I want to try to protect the column from any, you know, this causing any scratches or anything like that, because I don't know exactly what length I'm going to need this, and I may just do a basic mock-up, and I don't even know if I want to cut this yet. You know, I'll have to look at it and see how much length I have. I may be able to make two pieces out of this so that I can have a longer version or a shorter version. But we'll figure that out when we get a little bit closer to actually getting in the car. Now I'm skipping ahead a little bit here because it talks about connecting the wiring, which I can't connect any wiring because I don't have any wiring. But it's talking about this floor mount plate, clamp, and gasket. And I've opened up the package, and it says that it wants this clamp facing down on the column. Now you could probably pick whichever direction you wanted, whether you wanted to face inboard to the car or outboard to the car. It doesn't really matter. Just know that they want this on the column. And this plate, which has these tangs sticking out here, that's so that when it's in the car, this will slip over that and tighten up and keep it in place. Now, I want to point out, if you look at this gasket or you look at this plate, they only fit together one way. You know, if you try to rotate it, obviously it's going to have some conflict. It also only fits one way in the car. So I'm going to show you that in just a second. And also, you know, you got 3 mount holes here. So you will need to either use or save the hardware from the original installation or come up with some new stuff if you don't have that. So just know that. Here's a couple of things I want to point out as well. It clearly points out in the instructions it's going to be helpful if you have another helper or a second set of hands. Since I don't, I am going to use what I have is a Velcro strap, and I'm going to feed it up through the holes where the normal mount bolts would go, and then feed it back down the other hole. And what that's going to do is give me a carrier for the column while I'm doing this. So this strap can actually hook on itself, And if you have, like I said, if you have a second pair of hands, that'd be great. But I don't. So I'm going to rely on this Velcro strap. Now, the other thing I want to point out, as I was saying earlier, this bracket, however you want to call it, if you look, it's got a shape to it where the tangs angle up. So if you're looking straight on, they have an upward angle. Well, your steering column goes in at an angle, and these line up just like that with the holes that are already in the firewall. So just know that. Now what I'm going to have to do is come up with some hardware, because I don't think I have the original bolts from the other firewall, but I'm going to take a look and see what I have and then work on getting that in place. Now the reason I'm doing it this way, I just want to verify things fit before I start putting the column in and going from there. As it turns out, I do have those bolts because I never pulled them out of the original firewall for this car. And yes, this is what's left of the Pony. And as I was saying before, you know, the steering box, you know, that's where the steering column would slip over the center shaft. And so I still have those bolts, and those are 5/16. So I'll take those out and reuse those. And this is why I don't get rid of stuff like this, what's left of this car, until I'm completely done, because I know there's going to be pieces that I can use or I will need later on. So this is the clamp that holds the column to the bracket gasket setup. This is a 7/16. So you'll just know that you'll have to loosen that up to give you some room. And then, you know, it tells you in the instructions, put the clamp on first and slide it up. Now, you notice that the wiring is taped to the column. I'm going to take that loose because I don't know exactly where this is going to end up. So I'm just going to get that out of the way for now. And then I'm going to slip the clamp on and the bracket. Now again, those tangs tell you which way is up. So if you compare where you're at with the bottom of the column, you know, with those slots, if you want to get kind of proactive about it, you set it up that way. Now this is a snug fit. I will say they've cut this pretty close going around this column. But it slips up there, and again, that clamp is going to slip over that and hold it in place. Now, I'm not going to tighten anything up because I don't know exactly where it's going to end up. The other thing I'm going to do is install one of the U-joints. Again, there's no up or down, you know, right or wrong, because you don't have anything indexed yet. But I'm going to put that on and tighten that into that groove on the column. And I'm going to tighten down that jam nut. Whoops, with the 1/2 inch. At this point I can also see that, hopefully you can see, in the inside of the U-joint here, you know, there's the other posts. There's 2 posts on that go on at the flat part of the center shaft. Now it's up to you. You can loosen those up now if you want, and back out the post. You know, you can snug down the nut to hold it in place. And if you want, you could even test fit. So there you have an idea of how that goes together. The other thing I want to do is temporarily install the other U-joint onto the rack and pinion setup. So I'm going to prep that, get that bolt backed out, or that post. And I'm also going to loosen up these. And again, I don't know what length of shaft I'm going to end up with. So just getting these out of the way. And if you want, again, good time to test fit, make sure things go together. Alright, so this is looking down on the input shaft on the rack and pinion steering. This does have a flat spot on the back side here, so I'm going to try to line up that bolt. I don't know why there should be a difference, but there you go. I don't think it really matters. It may come into play with some other system, but with this setup, as long as it slides on, it should be fine. I'm not going to tighten down the jam nut just yet. No reason to. But that's how that's going to set up. If you notice, I have one bolt here facing out, or inboard, let's say, and one facing down. Whenever I go to put the steering column in, that's going to help me index which way that shaft is going to go. Because you can't, the steering column, there's nothing on it right now. No steering wheel. So that center post is going to spin wherever you want it to get the alignment. But at least now I have an idea of what direction it needs to be. It looks like it's lining up now. Of course, the tricky part is trying to get in here without blocking the camera and getting these bolts in the holes. Now it's lining up. Good. Okay, so if I want to try to set up the steering column in the same kind of dimension as what would be the original column, I'm going to take a measurement from basically this point on the firewall, and that's where the master cylinder would sit, so there's a recessed area there. And if I come back to, let's say, where the steering wheel would sit, so it's about 25 inches, somewhere in that range, for the original column, or the original, setup. So I may set up the steering column, let's say, long, and save some of the material for the DD shaft, as they called it. And then if we need to shorten it, we can do that and not worry about, losing or having to come up with another shaft. Because if you make it too short, well, you're going to have to buy another shaft and then extend it. So, all right, if I use that same concept and I come in here and come off the back side of the firewall like I did on the other half, or what was left of the car,
I come back and I'm about 23.5 inches. So a little bit less than what was in the original setup, but I only have, I don't know, a couple of inches really that I can go back, because you know, obviously with the angle, it's going to make it shorter at the bottom, so I can only slide so much back up into the dash or into the firewall. But I'm still planning on making this a little bit on the long side. What I mean by that is, you know, the steering column sitting higher out of the dash, and this can be adjusted. You know, if we need to, we take that shaft, cut it down later, and then just slide everything down. So I think that's going to work. Alright, I've made some adjustments, and I managed to get the column out to a point of 24.25, you know, at the top here. And what that does is it leaves a small amount sticking through the firewall. So to give you some idea. Now I will point out, whenever I was adjusting the column, it's easy to slide it in and out if you don't have it at an angle. You know, if you drop it down a little bit without the bracket or something holding it in place, it will slide pretty easily. But as you go up, it puts a bind on it. Now again, I'm making this long, but it can be shortened later. So at this point, I'm happy with how it looks, its location, all that, and I just need to come up with a measurement for that, what they call the DD shaft. So let me see if I can do something to help with that. I should also point out that I do have the factory mount bracket in place with some bolts holding it in. Of course, that's temporary, but at least it's at the right angle and where it'll be when it's finally put together. After looking at this and trying to figure out a good way to do a measurement, you know, if you go to from this top portion to this cut edge, that's 3/4 of an inch. Yep, exactly 3/4 of an inch from there to there. Now, keep in mind, this U-joint is not going to be doing this. It's not going all over the place. It's going to be doing a very subtle movement based on the angles here. You know, it's not dramatic. So what I plan to do is I don't want to go 3/4 of an inch. I mean, I can, but I want to keep that length in case I want to shorten it later. So I'm going to go with 1 inch. And that's going to put it just inside of that area, you know, a little bit, you know, 1/4 inch more, obviously. But I think it'll be fine. So now what I need to do is come up with a measurement. If I use, you know, the 1 inch, I need to get a measurement from face to face of each one of the U-joints and then add 2 inches. Just a simple way to make the length that I need. So now you can see both ends of the U-joint. I'm going to take a tape measure and compare one to the other, get them square as best I can. And my measurement is 9 5/8 inches. Yeah, I'm happy with that. 9 5/8, so 10, 11 5/8. I'm going to make that shaft 11 5/8 inches long. Perfect. Now let me take this opportunity to show you that the end, the original end, they had ground it on a taper. So that way it was easier to slip into the universal joint. So I'm going to repeat that or replicate that on the end that I just cut off. And I really like that disc. This is one of those bad boy discs that I've shown earlier. That's impressive. I mean, a lot less debris, some sparks, but not like the fibrous disc that throws all kinds of junk in the air. So right on the money, 11 5/8, and I'll taper that down and go from there.
Alright, so I want to show you how this worked out. I cut this, like I said, at 11 5/8, and it fits nice. You know, it bottoms out in the bottom half here, hits the inside or the back side of that universal joint, and it also fits in the upper half, no problem. And if you angle it a little bit, it'll go all the way to the back side of that U-joint. Now, I didn't want to take the steering column back out to make this fit because I knew it would not fit because it was so long. So I loosened up the bolt on the splines on each end, and I was able to push the U-joints back just a little bit, and it gave me just enough room that I could piece this together. So now what I can do is adjust the length of the U-joint, get it back in the groove, and tighten the bolt back up, and that's going to take care of it. That's going to be right where I need it. Now what you can do as well, if you wanted to, you could do some pre-measuring. Like you wanted to know where this is lengthwise within the U-joints. So I already know the rough idea is where the cut line is, let's say, on the machine line on the ends here. I already know that's pretty close to where I want the end of this. So you can just draw a measurement, draw a line, and slip it in, and then kind of adjust until you get that line where you want it to be. So I'll just do it as an example. If I come off here and I say, okay, there's about, 3/4 or whatever, and then I do the same thing here, draw a line, you can do that, and you can shift it back and forth, and look at that. You can see the red line on each, and of course I still need to set the length here, but at least this gives me an idea of where I need to be between the two. So I think that worked out really well. I like the way that looks. And again, there's barely any rotation or angle on this U-joint. A lot more on this one, but should not be a problem. Now of course, I will install the turn signal and the tilt rods later, and then we'll have to figure out what steering wheel is going to go on it. And that clamp will need to be tightened down. And of course, little things, the tape removed. That's all going to come later, and as with wiring up the column itself. But not too bad. I like the way it turned out. I think it's going to work just great. I also wanted to point out that along with that clamp needing tightened up later, I did have a gasket boot ordered from CJ Pony Parts. It has not arrived, but I don't know that I could even use it on the steering column. If I can, I'll install it later. If not, it'll go on another project. But I wanted to try it with that boot that's supposed to be there. Like I said, I don't know if it'll work or not, but it's in here, it's in the car, and I'm happy with it. Alright, that's going to be the end of this video. Now I hope I gave you some good explanation or reasoning as to why or how or whatever, but there is more to do on this. Later on I'll have to wire up the connecting plug for the various functions, the horn and the turn signals and that sort of thing. So that'll have to come later once we get to the point of installing a wiring harness. But that's all I can do for now. I don't think it was that bad. Once I got the angle right and I could adjust the length, it made it all that much better. It helped having the old front end of the original pony car, or Brooklyn Pony, and using it as a reference to get some different measurements. So keep that in mind. If you're going to pull out one from your car that has the solid post, just know, as per the instructions, you're going to have to cut that post off and then modify it to make the steering column fit. But if you're going with a rack and pinion setup, or even if you're looking into one of the electric deals, it may not be that hard to do like I just did with this. Anyway, so as I said, I still have to install later on the turn signal and the tilt function, and of course the pins. Now I don't know exactly what the next video is going to be. I want to do another one on the pony, but I need to take care or figure out some things. I know that there's some seat belts that need to be installed. The owner and I have talked about it. He ordered these 3-point harnesses and front and rear, so I need to look into that a little bit more and see how hard that's going to be and what I need to do maybe to modify some things so that the steering column, so that the seat belts can be mounted. So that may be the next video. We'll see. I think that's it. So if you haven't already, I ask you to subscribe and hit that bell. If you notice, I've been using a bell on the latest live stream, and you can watch that on Monday nights. I've been doing that about 7 o'clock. So anyway, you can hit the bell if you want to see the notifications. Go back and look at the rest of the playlist. Explore around a little bit. Might be something on here that interests you beyond this convertible. There's a 68 Mustang known as Jade. There's a 68 Camaro that I did a bunch of work on previously. So all kinds of stuff on the channel. But again, that's it. I thank you for watching. I thank you for subscribing and helping to make this channel grow and become something great. And I look forward to making more videos in that process. So until next time, take care of yourselves. Today's video, I'm going to be trying to and I didn't want to do that. Nope. And the rest of it.
Well, it turns out I do have those bolts because I out as far as
Oh, and by the way, I have hats. So if you're interested in getting a hat, contact me, joedaddy'sgarage@gmail.com. We can see what we can do to get you a hat. I only have so many, but they are available and they can come your way if you want one. See ya.